In this video, I'm going to go through my process on how I mix acoustic guitars and get them sounding lovely, big and warm. But before we get started, my name is Ed, you're watching Stokes Sounds, and if you like this video, please don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe and leave a comment. And if you want to support the channel, head over to our website, stokessounds.com. Now let's dive in. So I've got this kind of acoustic guitar style track here, and let's actually take a look at the process of how I got them to sound, like this. But let's have a listen to the track itself so you can hear what we're working with. So, you can hear from there, it's nicely recorded. The guitar was a Martin, the mic was a U87 AI into a Neve 73 preamp, and then going into a TubeTech CL1B compressor and then into Pro Tools. Now that is a lovely setup, but you don't always get guitars that are recorded like that, but the process that I'm going to show you will kind of be around, what I would do when it comes to kind of all guitars that I get. The EQ might change, but when it does come down to acoustic and organic instruments, the way it's recorded is the most important part. And to be honest, it is very hard when you don't have a good sounding guitar to begin with to make it sound good. Now there are tricks of the trade we can do, with RX, EQ, and all of that great stuff, but at the end of the day, to get something to organically sound great, it needs to be captured great in the recording process. So that's why it's really important. But we've got these guitars here, and let's actually just take a look at kind of how I process these. Now if you look here, we've got about 6 different guitar parts, maybe 7 actually, yeah. And basically the arrangement is really key. The song starts off with just this simple guitar part that's just to the left hand side. You can see here I've got it panned at 41, and that's so it leaves space in the vocal in the mix. But for this demonstration we are just talking about acoustic guitars and not the overall mix itself. But in this case I've got it panned to the left, so these guitar parts here sound like this. And you can hear it's just very simple and played really nicely. So the way that I processed that was I just did some general EQ work, just taking out some bottom end that is just, the rumble, the room noise that's just not needed, and then some mid-range boxiness frequencies that were causing problems. So if we just take all the other plugins off and just listen to that in solo, and then let's have a listen to the EQ and let's, hear what it is I'm actually taking out. You can see none of that is needed. They're like the offending resonant frequencies that I just hate. So, I start with my process when it comes down to acoustics is take away things that I don't like, things that are not benefiting the actual guitar itself. Then after that, I go into a Pogchild EQ by Waves. It's, kind of their version of the Fairchild, very, very good compressor, and it just works well on acoustic guitar, so I went with it. So if we have a listen with this on and off, you'll hear what it's doing. So you can hear there, it's not doing too much. When it comes down to organic instruments, I don't really like to compress things heavy because it depends on the sound you're going for. But in acoustic style stuff, you want to keep everything kind of light, simple, and just kind of let everything just breathe and let it just be natural. So with this, I'm only doing 2 or 3 dB of compression, and I'm just allowing the way that the guitar is played just to kind of cut through. Now, as I said, it was tracked on TubeTech CL1B compressor with about 2 to 3 dB of compression as well. So, there is reasons to why I'm not compressing so much in the box, and that's just because of the way it was recorded. But if it wasn't recorded with compression on the way in, you could do maybe a little bit more compression in the box. It's just taste and what you like. But I've got the kind of the attack release on around 2, and again it's just very, very subtle stuff. And then after that I then go into a virtual mix rack by Slate, and in this kind of thing, what I'm doing here is I'm brightening up the guitar, taking away frequencies that I don't like, but I'm doing kind of more broad EQ, and I'm using these styles of EQs just because I like what the original analog versions do. So this Paultec EQ has a very kind of smooth top end, and so when I'm adding top end on an acoustic guitar, I want to have it smooth. I don't want it to be sharp. I don't want it to be brittle. And so I went with the Pultec style EQ because I know from my knowledge of the analog gear that it does, have a nice top end. And Slate did a fantastic job of emulating that in their plugin. So as you can see here, I'm just boosting some 8K. So if we turn off the other EQ and then have this EQ on and off, you'll hear what it's doing. You can really hear like the fur on the acoustic guitar, when it's being picked, you can really hear like the fingers like picking that string, and you get that a lot when you boost 8K on a Pultec. It just, as I say, it's this really nice, smooth, kind of expensive sounding EQ that just sounds great on acoustic. So, I went with it. Then after I did kind of the boosting at the high end, I felt like I wanted to add a little bit more boost, but I wanted to do, 8K on the Pultec and then 12K on this EQ, just adding a little bit more kind of brightness. And again, I would have probably done this because it would have fitted well with the track. But I did it, and then I also took out some 200 hertz, which is offending frequencies in acoustics. Now these EQs, they're very kind of broad kind of EQ. I'm not doing kind of notch filtering, which is what I would do on the Pro Q4. So again, very, very kind of broad, subtle stuff. So if we have a listen with this EQ on and off, you'll hear what it's doing. Now let's have a listen with both of the EQs on, and then I'll bypass them, and then you'll hear kind of what they're doing together. You can really hear it's adding a lot. It's not a huge difference, but what it is doing to the way that guitar is being played and the emotion that it's kind of portraying in the way it's played, it's really coming out with those EQs. And using multiple EQs for different harmonic saturation is a great way to kind of get the acoustic guitar sound. Now I will say, to get a good acoustic, you've got to have a good player, a good guitar with good guitar strings. And I think that is actually more important than the equipment, because you could have the best equipment in the world with the best compressor, the best mic, but if the guitar player isn't that good, or even the tuning of the guitar isn't quite right and it's a little bit flat, it doesn't matter. You've ruined that take. And there are tricks in the trade, as I've mentioned before. You can use Melodyne, but when you start changing tunings of things and you start doing a lot of that kind of stuff, kind of that real hard editing work, and it's an acoustic style track, you really ruin that acoustic guitar. So it's a lot of small things that add up that make the huge difference. So that's kind of what I'm doing on the main kind of acoustic guitar plug. Then when you get to the chorus of the song, there's these two left and right, which is recorded just to add some more stereo. So let's have a listen to what these are doing. So that's doing exactly the same as what the verse was doing, but when it gets to the chorus, to make it wider, this is all about arrangement. We've done a left and a right, and it just kind of makes it feel like it's got bigger. Because it's an acoustic arrangement, there's not other instruments in there. You want to try and do things within the stereo image to make things sound bigger in choruses. You could do that with volume automation, you could do that by production, adding things into the song. But in this case, I just kind of use stereo imaging to kind of widen it in the chorus. That's what I did there. And again, it will have the same kind of EQ compression settings on, just going through them. And again, that's just to keep a consistency. It's the same guitar, it's the same part with the same mic, so it doesn't need to have different EQ changes. So if you have a listen to the transition then between these guitars going from the verse or the pre into the chorus. So a cool transition. It's like slightly onto the left, and then it opens up stereo left and right in the chorus, which is really, really cool. And you know, you'll notice that there's kind of movements within the guitar itself, like there's this kind of string sound. You heard that string sound? Now I could have taken that out with RX, but again, I want it to be organic. I want it to be like, you know, you're in like a nice acoustic show and you're listening to a singer and a guitar player, and you're going to hear those kind of imperfections, and that's what makes acoustic style tracks acoustic. It's having those imperfections. You know, if this was a straight up pop track with other production, then yeah, I'm going to clean it. But in this sort of stuff, I wanted to leave the characteristics of an acoustic guitar player and what it would sound like if I was watching them live. So that's what I went with. Then if we have a look at the other part, which is underneath in the pre and the chorus, we've got this part here. So this is doing like a picking movement. So if we play that part with the other acoustics that we've just played, so that comes in on the pre-chorus. Sounds great, you know, and it's really cool because that picking part that I just played, this part here, you'll see that comes on the right speaker. So again, it's the arrangement thing. So the song started off with the first acoustic guitar part that was just this kind of pluck thing onto the left. Then it comes into the picking part in the pre, which is on the right. So you've got this kind of stereo image of space, slightly doing slightly different parts. And that's, you know, adding again the emotion to the character of the track itself. And if we have a look at the plugins that I used on this, again, the same kind of filtering, taking out things I don't like, you know, adding compression, it would be slightly different on the compression. Because it's a different part, there's more kind of strings being plucked, there's a little bit more movement in the compressor, and then we're using the VMR again by Slate. This guitar, it was the same guitar, same mic, everything was the same in this recording. So again, a lot of it is just copy and paste. Once you get a good sound on one part, copy and paste it to the others. Now, I don't always do that, and I don't recommend doing that if it's different actual, like huge different guitar parts in the arrangement and different guitar takes on different days, that sort of stuff. I wouldn't do it then, but in this case it allowed me to do that. You'll see this audio file down here, and these are kind of different guitar, I call it like the salt and vinegar on your chips, but in the guitar it's just adding kind of little enhancements in the arrangement to just make it feel that kind of real like acoustic coffee shop style guitar. So if we have a listen to that in solo and then I'll play it with the other guitars, and you'll hear what it's doing. So if you have a listen to that in context with the guitars together. You know, just a nice little part, and that's, you know, slightly to the right. So, you know, you can see here in the mix, the picking guitar part was kind of 62 to the left, to the right, and then this part was kind of half that. So again, it's creating that stereo image. You know, if you think 180, you've got different parts going in like that, and that's kind of, you know, how I view it. And again, this will have the same kind of things going on, same EQ, same compression, same virtual mix rack, again applying the EQ that I like. And then after all of that, I then group we've got two more parts here. We've got a left and a right to go into the middle eight, and they sound like this. Hear that in context with all of them in. Again, that's just to create tension, create build up, you know, and that was, you know, the guitar was just kind of this kind of palm muted, just going through the chords, again, just creating that kind of movement. And on this one, you know, I did a slightly different EQ, taking out some more low end, which we can have a listen if we just solo the left hand side. Again, taking out offending frequencies. And the reason why I did more, of a high cut was just because I don't need all of that rumble in there, considering all of the other guitars are taking up that kind of lower end, because the EQ is slightly different. You can see here, it's around 73, and then on this one, it's all the way up to 144, so it's double that. And that's just because I've already covered that in the other guitar parts. So I don't need that low end rumble again in this part. You just add noise and it will just be messy and muddy. Then it is some compression. If we have a look at what the compression is doing. So again, that's doing a little bit more compression than on the others, but that's just because of the way that it's being played. It's a bit more transient, and I just wanted to control that transient, element of that audio file within the context of all of the guitars together. If we solo all of the guitars together, it sounds like this that I did earlier in the demonstration of it. Sounds great. I love acoustic music, and I love great acoustic guitar arrangements that just sound pleasing to the ear. So once I've done all of these acoustic guitars, I then put that into an acoustic guitar group, and on the group I'm just using some multibands because of the way the guitar's being played, and the offending frequencies on acoustics are between kind of 100 hertz and 500 hertz. That low end bass rumble, especially when you're kind of on the the low E string, it kind of boom comes through the speakers, and I wanted to control that. I did control that on the individual elements, taking out some of that kind of boxiness. But then what happens is when you have all of these guitars together, you get a build up of that frequency. Now, I used a multiband because I didn't want to just, carve that out on an EQ and lose it, because this only happens when the guitarist is kind of playing that lower strings. It doesn't happen, in the higher up parts. So by using a multiband, when, those parts come in, or that chord comes in where it's got the low part in it, it just controls it. So it doesn't kind of, crap out the speaker. It basically just controls the low end in the guitars. So if we have a listen with this on and off, you'll hear what it's doing. Now I'm going to solo that frequency that we're doing the multiband compression on. So you heard that kind of muddiness in all the guitars together. That's just being controlled, and it's not doing too much, doing about 2 or 3 dB of multiband compression, and that's just again controlling that low end so it doesn't build up. And that's all the actual kind of processing that I did on the acoustics. We got an acoustic guitar room, which would be a room reverb, and that is the LX480 Essentials by Relab Development. Great plugin, and I just used Joe Corral's acoustic instrument room. Joe is a great mixer, and this preset is fantastic, so I went with it. It sounded good to me. So if I just increase the reverb on the acoustic guitar, you'll hear what it's doing. It's a great reverb. And again, I went with a room. I wanted it to be organic. I wanted it to feel like the listener, is in a room listening to the guitar player. I think when it comes down to, mixing, you've got to really think about what it is you're doing and kind of why you're doing it and the reasons. Am I doing it because I want to feel like it's in an arena, or do I want it to feel like it's in a coffee shop? And, this kind of stuff, acoustic music, you kind of want to create that kind of warm feeling to the listener, and just having a nice acoustic room. And as I say, Joe Corral did a great job of making that reverb preset just sound really nice. I don't think I touched the preset at all. I think I literally just left it on his kind of signature preset, which would be this one, the room. Yeah, literally just that. Just went with it. Pick a reverb. If it sounds good, don't change it. And that's literally what I did with that. Sometimes I'll mess with the pre-delay depending on where I want it to sit in the mix. But in this sort of thing, this reverb worked, so I went with it. And that is the acoustic guitars. What I can do is, if I just play the actual whole track itself with the vocals in, which is, you know, what this guitar was in, the actual track itself. Let's just have a listen so you can hear what it sounds like in the mix.
But I think I lost it. Said it, I was fine. Said it from the coffee. Remember how I died when you started walking? That's my life. That's my life. I put up a fight. Take it out my earrings. Don't you know the vibe? Don't you know the feeling? You should spend the night. Catch me on your ceiling. That's your price. That's your price. Ooh, you got me thinking she's so cool. But I know what I know.
And that's how I mix acoustic guitars. Really hope you guys enjoyed watching this video, and you know, not just about the plugins that I'm using, but why I'm using them, the thought process, and you know, how I apply what I'm thinking in the actual box itself, and to create that kind of atmosphere, acoustic sounding track. If you like this video, please don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and if you've got any questions, please leave a comment down below. I will get back to all of you. I love talking about this sort of stuff, so yeah, please do. Any questions you got, put them down below, and I'll see you all again next week for another video.